is one law which every citizen of India should know. Whether you are student of company secretary course, Cseet or not, every citizen. So that is every student, every citizen, everybody basically in India should know the Indian Constitution. Correct? That is common sense. So you will tell, sir, why we should know Constitution, sir? Why? Because once you're a citizen of our country, you should know it. That is your basic thing. Don't ask why you should know. If I ask you, where is your house address? Will you ask me, sir, why should I know my house address, sir? Obviously, you should know your house address to go to your house. Same way, you should know the Indian Constitution. If you are a citizen of India, if you want to be in India, you should know the Indian Constitution very well. So, very one simple thing. We say Indian Constitution is the supreme law of the land. What do you mean by supreme law of the land? That means it is the highest law in our country. There is no law which is higher than Indian Constitution. So every law in India, please remember that every law in India has to be in tune with Indian Constitution. So Indian Constitution is like the mother law for all other laws in India, whether it is company law, labor law, criminal law, civil law, economic laws, security laws, traffic law, anything under the sun. Anything under the sun in India, the supreme law of the land is the Indian Constitution. Never forget that. Supreme law of the land is Indian Constitution. The Indian Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Alright? So now let's look at this concept. So which is the highest law in India? The Indian Constitution is the highest law which is there in India. Okay, so now that we know that, let us go further to some of the important points in Indian Constitution. What are the basics we should know in Indian Constitution? What is Indian Constitution? I already told you. It is the supreme law of the land. It is the highest law of the land. Anybody asks you, what is Indian Constitution? You can tell it is the highest law in India. There is no law which is higher than Indian Constitution. And as a citizen of India, all of us should know, if not everything, at least basics. We should know the basics of Indian Constitution. This is our duty. If you are a citizen of India, you should know the Indian Constitution. It's your duty. Make that effort. Anyway, now you are studying, you will understand very well. Make sure you tell your parents, make sure you tell your friends, your relatives, all the basics which you learnt in the Indian Constitution. So what is the Indian Constitution? The first point you should know is that it gives you the basic structure of the nation's polity. What is this nation's polity? That means what is the structure of our country? We have one country, we have so many states, then we have district, then how we are electing the representatives, what is prime minister, what is president. The whole way how India works, that is the Indian polity, and the Indian Constitution gives the basic structure of the nation's polity. Which nation it will give? Obviously, the Indian nation. Built on the foundations of fundamental values. So our constitution is built on the foundations of fundamental values, especially in India. You know very well, India has a very, very rich history. It is the oldest culture. It is the oldest tradition in the whole world. Correct? When America was being formed just 300 to 400 years ago, India was already thousands of years old. Correct? We have such a very unbelievable history. Correct? So that is the greatness of the Indian people and the Indian history. So obviously, you should know that our constitution, which is the Indian Constitution, is basically built on the fundamental values of what is being an Indian. Yes, the preamble of the Constitution, which is the most important thing you should know, it gives the vision for India. What does the preamble give? It gives the vision for India. It gives the aims and objectives of the country. So, we understood first point, basic structure of the Indian polity is there in the Constitution. Constitution is built on fundamental values of what is India. Preamble of our constitution. What is the preamble? The first part of the constitution. The first part of the constitution is called as the preamble. We'll go through that, don't worry. So I'll teach everything, every single thing I'm teaching. So that is what I tell students. If you come to me, I am Alok. If you come to me, I'll make sure that every line you understand, and that is what is important. Don't worry about time. Don't worry about time. We have to become an expert. We have to become an expert, and I am here to make you an expert. It is very much possible. So what does a preamble, the first part of our constitution, give? It gives the vision for India, aims and objectives of India. It also gives the ideals and aspirations of a renaissance India. What is this ideals and aspirations? See, what is this renaissance India? You should know all this. That means, what is our future? What do we want to do? This is 1947. So India, I have told you many times, again I'm going to tell you, it was ruled by British from 1600 to 1947. 1600 to 1947, correct? Before that also, right from the year 1100 or so, there were Middle Asian rulers. All the Muhammad Ghazni and Ghori, all these kind of rulers came to India, and they also, then we had Mughal Empire. So many things happened. For 1,000 years, India was ruled by outsiders, whether it is from Iran side, all this Ghori and Ghazni, or whether it is Britishers, 1600 to 1947. So for 1,000 years, India was ruled. So finally we got independence 1947. We know that very well. So that time in the constitution, what is the end of the day? What is constitution? It is a book, correct? But it is not just a book. It is a sacred book. It is not a religious book. It's a sacred book, correct? So please understand the ideals and aspirations of a renaissance India. India which was again coming back to its old glory. After being ruled for 1,000 years, we finally got the independence in 1947. So the constitution gave the ideals and aspirations. Okay. Then you should know what is there in our preamble. We will read the preamble one by one, but now you should know the basics. So you should know one basic thing. The preamble of our constitution plus the fundamental rights plus the directive principles, we call it as the soul of the constitution. Sir, what is this, sir? Suddenly you're telling fundamental right, directive principles. Suddenly you don't tell something, sir. If that is what you're thinking, please remember one thing. Fundamental rights, directive principles, we are going to cover in detail. But you should just know simple thing for 1 mark question. Because end of the day, we are having Cseet legal aptitude, which is multiple choice question exam, correct? So what is the soul of the constitution? If somebody asks, you should tell preamble plus fundamental rights plus the directive principles. What is fundamental rights? Your basic rights which you have. What is directive principles? What are the principles under which the government should frame the laws? What are the principles under which the government should frame the laws for the benefit of citizens? End of the day, don't forget one thing. Who wrote the Indian Constitution? Don't tell B.R. Ambedkar. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, okay, he was basically